Good afternoon. Baruch haba. Welcome to Teaching Ministry of Harlingen Messianic Synagogue. We welcome you here today. We're glad to see everyone with us. A few announcements. First of all, we will be having Bible study tomorrow, men's Bible study at 9:30. The book of Leviticus, chapter 4, unintentional sin. And then ladies' Bible study at noon. And we're talking about the peace offerings. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about God tells us that there are certain things that we're not permitted to eat off of the animal because they're offered for sacrifices, certain fats, certain parts of organs. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow in the ladies' Bible study. As we, good to have Daniel back with us today. He was healed. Yeah, his apparently his little puppy dog beat him up pretty bad. No, his back went out. Mine also went out, but God is good, and so we're up and sitting upright anyway, right? So we be praying for Richard's little ones. They've been sick all week, so be praying for them. The pollen in the air and everything gets into them, and Kara gets it so bad that it makes her throw up. So be praying for them that they would recover. Also be praying, continue to pray for my mom. She is slowly going downhill day by day, and so basically we're on the watch. So please be praying for her. Pray for my sister and my wife, who basically are taking the brunt of this. They deal with her. They have to change her, clean her, all of those things, feed her. And so be praying for our family with all of this that's taking place. Pray for Carmen. She's out of town. She went home to Puerto Rico. So be praying for her as she travels. The Lord would bring her back safely. All right. So I think that's all the announcements. Oh, yes. Tonight is Purim. Tonight begins Purim. And so, again, we're not having any celebration here because it's at the end of Shabbat, and I don't have it in me to do this and then do tomorrow's Bible study and everything. So you celebrate at home, basically. It's have a party. So, have a party of one. I don't know. Have a party of whoever's with you. Basically, it's the reading of the story of Esther, okay? So the reading of the telling of the story of Esther. Don't forget to boo Haman and cheer Mordecai. And when the name of Esther is read, you go, oh. So, how cute, how sweet. So that is tonight. We have Passover coming up. Pesach is coming up in a few weeks. The Sunday before Pesach is going to be on a Monday. I think it's the 22nd of April. So that Sunday, instead of Bible study, we're going to have synagogue cleanup. Okay, take care of everything, get everything set up. Miss Wilma usually does this, but she's got she's getting things ready. But I don't know if she'll be able to come. But anyway, what we need to just have a nice big spring cleaning and get all the chametz, everything with yeast, out of the house. And actually, you should already have been working on that. Clear out all the chametz out of your house. Get ready for Pesach. There's not to be Torah. There's not to be chametz in your house, and so you're not to eat it. You're not to even have it in your possession. And so unload all the cereal, all the tortillas, all the bread, everything, all like that, because we switch over to matzah for a week. And so get ready for that. We oftentimes get overcrowded at Pesach time. And so for the last couple of years, we've done it this way. What we're going to do is we're going to start handing out tickets next week. We'll start handing out tickets. The cost is $8 per person. If you don't have the $8, don't worry about it. Don't fret. We're not going to say, no, you can't come. Okay, but what we do ask is those of you who are a little more blessed than others. We have people here who are blessed. We have people who are blessed with more riches, and we have people who are blessed with poverty. All right, so but if you are a little more blessed than some of those around you, help them out. Buy one of their tickets for them, or a few tickets, or what have you. And so um, um, the purpose of the tickets is so that the synagogue doesn't go down, providing and all of this to keep us up at a even keel. And then on top of that, this is a time, the holidays are always a time to give extra to charities and such. This is a charity, and we appreciate your gifts. And so we ask at this time of the year, this helps to get us through the summer because the numbers fall, people are out of town, what have you, the offerings drop, the tithes drop, and we still have to pay the rent. The rent doesn't change. The electric doesn't change. All of these things. In fact, the electric will go up because we'll be running the air conditioners more. So we just ask that you help us out with this. So anyway, what we're going to do is it is first of all, it is offered to the members of the synagogue first. Okay, if we have and we seat about 80 people in here, we have room for approximately 80 people. So we offer it to you who come faithfully to the services. We offer it to you first. And then in the last week, if you have visitors, if we have tickets left over, you have visitors, what have you, it'll be first come, first serve. People outside of our community, they don't attend here, but they oftentimes during the holidays, and we will offer it up the week before. We'll see, how many tickets we have and what room we have. And so please hold off inviting guests until we find out, how many tickets we have left over after everybody here has taken theirs. Find out. Miss Wilma is the contact person, so she'll be keeping track of the tickets. So if you need any help or any advice or anything like that, you need to contact her, talk to her. I think most everybody has her phone number. If not, you can get a hold of her on Messenger. And so you'll be letting her know how many people you have coming, how many tickets you need. So we'll start passing those out next week and getting ready for Pesach. All right. Genesis chapter 1. Yes. Okay, so Hezekiah has RSV, lung infections, and so let's be praying for him. That's Nora. Some of you may know Nora. That's Nora's little boy. He's the same age as Kara, I believe. So be praying for them. All right, Genesis chapter 1, verses 20 through 23, the fifth day of creation, talking about swarming things. Let's go to Adonai in prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we love you. We thank you, Lord, for the privilege of being here today. We thank you, Father, for your goodness and mercy, for the love that you showed to us through sending your Son, our Messiah, Yeshua Mashiach, to live out the Torah perfectly, Father, in completeness and fullness, to show us how it is done. And then without any sin, he went to the crucifixion. He gave up his life and he shed his blood for our salvation on our behalf. Father, he is the Passover lamb that takes away the sin of the world. And so we thank you for this great gift of salvation. We thank you, Father, that he rose again from the dead on the third day, that he ascended up on high to be our advocate before your throne, and that one day soon, we hope may it be soon and in our day, that he returns to take up his position as King of Kings and Lord of Lords over this earth, over creation. I ask, Father, that you would bless us as we study together. I ask, Holy Spirit, that you touch me, fill me, that you breathe upon these words, that they not be simply words, Father, but truth that you would have us to know and understand, that we might better live for you, that we might better be prepared to meet our King and Father one day, knowing that we have to stand before you and give answer to our lives. We ask that you would speak to us then and give us understanding and insight so that we might live for you. We ask this in the name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen. So Genesis chapter 1, verse 20 through 23. It says, Vayomer Elohim, Yisretsu Chamayim Sheretz Nefesh Chaya Ve'ov Al Haaretz Al Pnei Rekiya Chashamayim Vayivra Elohim Et HaTaninim HaGedolim Ve'et Kol Nefesh HaChaya HaRomeshet Asher Shadsu Chamayim LeMinechem Ve'et Kol Of Kanav LeMinechu Vayad Elohim Kitov Vayvarek Otam Elohim Lemor Peru Urvu Umilo Et Chamayim Bayamim Vachaof Yirev Baaretz Ha'erev Havoker Yom Sheni. I think that was right. Anyway, I left that part of the verse off, so I'm trying to remember what the words were there. So God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens. So God created, hang on just a second. So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning the fifth day. Last week we began the study of the fifth day of creation, which begins the creation of animal life, beginning with swarming creatures. So what are swarming creatures? This includes all aquatic life, all life in the water, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and insects. And we learned how all of these creatures are imbued with what Torah calls nefesh chaya. Say nefesh chaya. Nefesh chaya, a living soul, is what most translations translate that as. Nefesh chaya, a living soul. Literally what this is a life force. This is the life force that is within all living beings. Okay? This does not include plant life, vegetation, trees, but it includes, and the distinction is that we are able to move around under our own power. Okay, so all creatures that are able to move around under their own power have this life force. Vegetation can be transplanted, but somebody has to do that, or something has to do that. They can't just get up and move by themselves. And so we learned that all creatures are imbued with what Torah calls nefesh chaya, a life force. And we learned how all animal life and human beings will be given this life force as a gift from Hashem. Life is a gift from God. Life is a gift from God. And so all of animal life and humans have this life force. One of the ways, one of the determinants of this having the life force is that you have the instinct of survival. You have a survival instinct. So your dog has a survival instinct. Cats, all animals, even fish have survival instincts. Even insects will have survival instinct. You don't believe it? Try to slap that mosquito. He doesn't say, "Here I am, just hit me." He tries to get away from you. This is survival instinct. And so even the insects have this life force within them. We learned how the bodies of these different animals will be taken from the elements in which they are found. So the bodies of aquatic beings are taken from the water. So these beings will live in water. The bodies of land dwellers are taken from the land. So they will dwell on the land. The bodies of amphibians, where do amphibians live? Both land and water. So their bodies are taken from swampy areas of both land and water, and so on. We learned that this act of creation is a one-time event, that this life force is no longer being created. The life force is no longer being created. Rather, it is passed down from parent to offspring, generation to generation. Thus, when speaking of this action, we do not call it the passing down of life from one generation to the next generation, parent to child. We do not call this production. We call this reproduction. Why? Because the life force is not being created. The parents are not creating a life force. They are passing down a life force. Okay? We learned that vegetation, plants, do not have this life force within them. This is reserved for creatures that are able to move about under their own power. And finally, we learned that each species is created with its own unique body type to thrive in the element for which it was intended. So fish have one body type. Birds have another body type. Mammals have a body type. Reptiles have a body type. And we find that in 1 Corinthians 15, 39 through 40, Rav Shaul declares, all flesh is not the same flesh. There is one flesh of humans, another flesh of animals, another of birds, and another of fish. There are also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one thing, while the earthly is another. The roots of the laws, the foundational roots of the laws governing kashrut. Say kashrut. It's where we get the word kosher from. The laws governing kashrut in Orthodox Judaism are actually found here. It has to do with the different body types. So fish, you eat fish. When you eat fish, the meat of the fish is not the same as the meat of a bird, of a chicken. The meat is different. It's a different type. The meat of mammals, the meat of a calf is not the same as that of a fish or that of birds. It is a different type of meat. And so where was I? So the basic laws of kashrut, that is, what is considered edible. Okay? What is considered to be edible for us? The root is found here. So understand this. No form of reptile or amphibians are considered food. Okay? So I don't care what Bubba Ray tells you. You're not allowed to eat rattlesnake. Okay? No reptiles can be eaten. Not frog legs. They're forbidden from us. No form of reptile or amphibians are considered food. Almost all insects are also not to be considered food. The exceptions are certain locusts, crickets, and grasshoppers. There are rules concerning this because not all locusts, not all crickets, and not all grasshoppers. There are rules. Okay? And so they are certain locusts, grasshoppers, and crickets. This includes insects that live in water. That's what shrimp is. Shrimp is an insect that lives in water. Lobsters are the sea's version of cockroaches. Okay? That's forbidden for us. They are, in fact, insects. They're big ones, but they are insects nonetheless. They are insects that live in water. No creature living in a shell is considered food. Only fish with both fins and scales are considered food. Birds of prey, or those which are commonly scavengers, are not food. So eagles are not food. Vultures are not food. Down here, the caracara is not food. Crows, blackbirds are not food. In fact, the distinction is this: only birds which have a crop and gizzard are kosher. They also have an extra toe. Okay? So if you look at the feet of most birds, kosher birds will have an extra toe. All right? They have a crop and a gizzard, which means what? If they have a crop and a gizzard, that means that they are seed eaters. They eat vegetation, they eat seeds. And that is that it does not mean that they never eat an insect, but it means that the majority of their diet is vegetation. Only mammals which chew the cud. So only animals which eat vegetation and chew the cud. The chewing of the cud means that they have 4 stomachs. Okay? What they do, a cow, a sheep, a goat, what they do is they eat the grass. It goes into the first stomach. They regurgitate it. They chew on it. It goes into the second stomach. They regurgitate it. They chew it some more. It goes into a third stomach. They regurgitate it. They chew on it, and it goes into the fourth stomach. And only then does it actually enter the digestive system. What is happening is each stomach has a set of enzymes that is breaking it down. That's why you can eat grass, but it won't help you. In fact, it can hurt you. It can damage you, but you get no nutrients out of it because the cellulose and the fibers and all have to be broken down in order to benefit from it. So the cow eats the grass, benefits from the grass. You eat the cow. You are what is called a second consumer, second category consumer, because you are eating the cow which has eaten the grass. And so only mammals which chew the cud and have split hooves are considered appropriate for food. So a cow chews the cud and has a split hoof. The horse chews the cud, but he does not have a split hoof. The pig has a split hoof, but he does not chew cud. So both of those are unclean. This means, again, that animals who hunt prey or are scavengers are not edible. Mammals that are fit for human consumption are all grazers, consumers of grass. They are vegetarians. Along with those laws, of which of the beings with a life force that we are permitted to eat, there are other laws which Torah gives to us. So the laws concerning what we are permitted to eat, there are other laws which Torah gives to us. For example, and we'll be talking about this in the ladies' Bible study tomorrow, certain fats, certain parts of organs are forbidden for us to eat from cattle, sheep, and goats. It does not apply to birds. It does not apply to fish. It applies to cattle, sheep, and goats. And the reason is that these are offered on the altar. Thus, they belong to Hashem. It doesn't matter that you're eating the animal at your home. This portion belongs to God. And so we are forbidden by God in Torah from eating those parts of the animal. As well, we are forbidden to cook a mammal in its mother's milk. We are forbidden from cooking a mammal in its mother's milk. This particular law has caused all manner of dissent and argument, disagreement, not only in the Messianic community, but even in normative Judaism. There is much discussion and debate about this. So today we will attempt to clarify. What I'm going to explain to you today is this. I'm going to give to you the reasons behind the rules. Okay? I'm going to give you the reasons behind the rule. Firstly, understand this. Three times, the Torah says this specifically. Lo tivashel gedi bechalev imo. Do not cook a young baby goat in the milk of his mother. 3 times this command is given. Do not cook. Literally it says a tender one in the milk of his mother. These 3 times are found in Exodus 23:19, Exodus 34:26, and Deuteronomy 14:21. Understand that when God says something one time, as my dad used to ask me, how many times should I have to tell you? 1 should be sufficient. That God repeats this specific law 3 times, each in a different place, tells us he does not want us participating in this act. It is very clear. That this law is repeated 3 times should give us pause. It's a caution to us. Be very careful here. 3 times. Be very careful. This is something that God wants us to pay attention to. Now, Orthodox Judaism teaches that the reason Hashem gives this mitzvah 3 times is for 3 purposes. The first is to warn not to cook a young goat or sheep in its mother's milk. And by the way, this also includes calves. The second is to teach that we should not benefit from such a combination. And the third is to teach us that we should not eat meat, red meat, and milk together. This mitzvah is applied particularly to the animals that are used in the sacrificial rituals, the animals that are laid on the altar. The sheep, the goats, the cattle. The Hebrew word for milk is leiv, L-E-I-V, leiv. Say leiv, leiv. Leiv means not just milk, but all milk products. So when it's talking, yes, dairy. The same is true with etz. Say etz. Etz is the Hebrew word for tree, but it doesn't just mean tree. It also means branches. It also means wood, lumber. Anything made of wood is called etz. Okay? So leiv is the same. So any product, any dairy product, it applies to all milk products, cheese, yogurt, cream, butter, etc. What is the purpose of this mitzvah? Why? Why does God say this? Well, the Torah does not explain to us why Hashem made this ruling. And it is important to understand that this command was not put into practice until the law was given. Okay? So it's not until Exodus chapter 23 in the Torah, in other words, the time of Moshe at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, that's when this rule came into effect, not before. We will speak more about that the law is not in effect until Exodus 23. The commentators, both Jewish and Christian, agree on two probable reasons that this command is given. The first reason is that the Israelites are preparing to enter the land of Canaan. And the Canaanim, the Canaanites, are extremely idolatrous, extremely pagan. There are some of their actions that I can't even tell you. They're so horrific that I cannot talk to you about them here in this place. That's how horrific, disgusting they are. Their idolatrous practices are particularly cruel and disgusting. Their pagan idolatrous rituals are particularly cruel and disgusting. And God forbids not only his people participating in such practices, but he also forbids his people from incorporating any pagan practices into the service for him. He says, we cannot do that. Do not take what they are doing out there and bring it into my house. Which is why we don't celebrate the winter holiday or the spring holiday that is celebrated even among Christianity. By the way, this year, Easter is like a week away or 2 weeks away or something like that. You notice it's not falling on Pesach. Why? That is instituted by the Council of Nicaea of the Roman Catholic Church in 300 AD. Because they wanted to de-Judify. They wanted to move it away. They were anti-Semitic, and they wanted to move it away from its Jewish roots. And so they placed it so only occasionally does Easter and Passover fall at the same time. But listen to Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 29 through 31. When Adonai, your God, cuts off before you, they're getting ready to enter the land. When Adonai, your God, cuts off before you the nations that you are going in to dispossess, when you have dispossessed them and settled in the land, listen, be careful not to be trapped into imitating them. You cannot sanitize paganism. It cannot be sanitized. Now, understand that the temple, because it was originally intended for holiness, can be resanctified. But that which was originally intended for wickedness cannot ever be sanitized. And so he says, be careful not to be trapped into imitating them after they have been destroyed before you. Do not inquire about their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their God? I will do the same. So don't say, well, let's see how they worship their God, and I'm going to worship our God the same way as they do. No. You are not to act like this toward Adonai, your God. For every abomination of Adonai, which he hates, they have done to their God. They even, hear this, they even burn their sons and their daughter in the fire of their God, they cook their children alive. That's how cruel these people were. Perhaps you have heard of their idol, Molech. Molech was a god made out of bronze, who was hollow on the inside. He sat on his throne with his hands outstretched to receive the babies. They would stoke the interior with wood, set it on fire, wait until the outstretched hands were red hot, and then place the living child in the red hot arms of this god. That's what the Canaanites did. Notice a couple of things from this verse that I read. Deuteronomy 12:29 through 31. First, that God calls these things abomination. Say abomination. The Hebrew word for abomination is to'eva. Say to'eva. To'eva means that it is disgusting, horrific, horrifically disgusting. Saying, God finds these acts to be horrifically disgusting. Why? Because they teach hatred and cruelty. They teach hatred and cruelty. Saying the Canaanim are a horrifically cruel, hate-filled society. They are mean. They are hateful. They are cruel, even to their own people. And God forbids his people from learning and practicing these ways. And he forbids it from entering it into his service. These people will even offer their own sons and daughters as human sacrifices to their demonic idols by burning their children to death. They are unspeakably cruel people, by the way. There's a certain war going on in which one group of people willingly sacrifices their children in order to kill the ones they consider to be their enemy. And they think it's a good thing. And they're living in the same area of land as the Canaanim. They have the same spirit and the same mentality. It is said by both Jewish and Christian scholars that the boiling of a kid, a baby goat, a baby sheep, a calf in its mother's milk was one of these detestably cruel acts that the Canaanim practiced. It was said that this was a fertility ritual where after the lamb, they would put a fire, they would milk a cow, put the milk over a fire, heat it up until it was boiling, and then they would place a living lamb inside the boiling milk. Kind of the way people boil lobsters. They would put it alive in the boiling milk. And then this milk would be used to sprinkle over the new spring crops to increase the yield. So they would take a mother's milk, bring it to a boil, drop the baby into that milk alive. When the milk had cooled, they would take the milk and sprinkle it on their crops, on their vegetables, their grains, their fruit, in order to increase their crop. In this way, they would invoke their demonic entities, which they worshipped. God absolutely forbade this practice. Not only for the pagan demonism being invoked, but also because of the cruelty being put into practice. Understand the cruelty involved in taking that which was to bring life and nourishment to the baby, the milk, and instead using that milk to bring about a torturous death for the baby. God requires his people to be a compassionate people. Even to our animals, we are required to be compassionate. And if we are required to show compassion, why? Listen, if we are required to show compassion to animals, how much more then are we required to show compassion to our fellow human beings? Thus, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There are numerous mitzvot in Torah that teaches kindness to animals. For example, we are not permitted to kill a mother and her offspring on the same day. If you take the child, you may not kill the mother. If you take the mother, you may not kill the offspring. They are not permitted. You are not permitted to kill both on the same day. You are required to rescue an animal in danger. You are required to rescue an animal in danger, even if it is Shabbat. Why? Because the life of that animal is more important than your keeping Shabbat, according to God. According to God. We are not permitted to take eggs from a nest while the mother is sitting on the nest. Why? Because that mother has the instinct for life. And she is there to shelter. She does not have the brain capacity that you and I have. Well, maybe she does. Sometimes I hear people say bird brain, but anyway. She does not have the capacity for thinking things out, but God has placed within her brain the capacity to understand saving her babies. So you are not permitted to take the eggs from a nest while the mother bird is sitting on the nest. Listen, we are required to value and to treat with respect all creatures that have nefesh chaya, the God-given life force, because this life force is a gift from God. And all of these beings, including you and me, have this in common: the instinct for life. Animal life is to be respected by the ordinances of God. And it is for this reason we Jews do not kill animal life unnecessarily. We do not take life if we do not have to take life. The purpose of food, by necessarily we mean the purpose of food or supplying necessary need. Saying we do not hunt, we do not fish for sport. It is forbidden for us to hunt or fish for sport. Why? Because that animal has a God-given instinct to live. And we are not permitted to take that. It is a gift to that animal from God. You are not permitted to take that without reason, without purpose, just because it's fun, because whatever. We do not hunt or fish to put trophies on our walls. You go into an Orthodox Jewish home, you will see no fish up on their wall. You will see no heads up on their wall. And in fact, Orthodox Jews do not practice catch and release. That is cruel to the animal. If you're not going to eat it, if you're not going to use it, leave it alone. It is cruelty. They say that it is better for the animal if you catch it and release it. No, you're torturing that animal unnecessarily just so that you can have an enjoyment. This is forbidden in Judaism. We are forbidden from doing these things. Now, we understand if the fish is oversized or undersized, yes, you release that. But just to go out there and fish, to put it on a hook, pull it into your boat or pull it into the shore, torturing it because it is the reason it is thrashing, the reason it is fighting you is it has the gift of the instinct of life within it. It wants to live. That's why it's fighting. And so if you're not going to use it, leave it alone. We don't kill unnecessarily. We do not kill without a purpose. And even in the killing of an animal or fish, we are to do so only with great respect and mercy on that animal. The animal is to be killed as quickly and as painlessly as possible. Why? That animal has within it the same will to live that you have and that I have. And it is a God-given will. Thus, it should only be taken as necessary for the purpose of life. And then, if we take that life, it must be done so quickly and mercifully. It is said that a person who is cruel to animals is also cruel to his fellow human beings. You find a person who is cruel, who mistreats animals, and I will show you someone who mistreats people. It is a spirit of cruelty that inhabits such a person. In Judaism, we are taught from our earliest days kindness, respect, mercy. This is the very purpose of Torah. It is a statistical fact that the Jewish people are the most generous, giving people, the most kind-hearted people in all of the world. What other nation do you know that would hesitate going to war because they don't want to kill their enemy? They don't want to kill them. The news media of today never tells you how many Palestinians are in Israeli hospitals with Jewish doctors and nurses trying to save them, rescue them, cure them, help them, heal them. Even though those very people only recently before were calling for the death of all of Israel. But it is to the Israeli hospitals they go when they need to be rescued. Golda Meir, the Israeli prime minister, during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, she was the prime minister during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, stated after the war concerning those who attacked Israel. They were all defeated. And she said this in an interview after the war. Speaking to those attacking nations, she said, "We can forgive you for killing our children, but we can never forgive you for forcing us to kill yours." That is the compassion of the nation of Israel, and that is the compassion What other nation pauses its war against terrorists in order for the people, the very people who hate them and want them dead and cheered on the terrorists, to flee, to give them the space to get out? What other nation does this? We don't. But our government is demanding that they do it, but they do it anyway. Because this is their heart. Why this attitude that is in such polar opposition to the attitude of most of the nations and most of the people in the world? Because we are taught to respect all life, even that of our enemies. Why? Because Judaism teaches that every human being has a spark of the divine. What? Let us make man in our image. Every human being, even the ones who hate us and want to kill us, were created in the image of God. And we respect that. We are taught to be a merciful people, even to our enemies. We are taught to love our neighbors as ourselves. And Yeshua Rabbeinu, the Messiah, taught us to love even our enemies. So this is the meaning of not cooking a baby in its mother's milk. Now, there's a major debate that takes place in various sects of Judaism, including Messianicism and the Hebrew roots movement. And that is, how far do we take this? Christianity mostly states that this does not pertain to them. Not all of them, but most of them say this does not pertain to them because they're not under law, they're under grace. So they believe that they can eat what they want, as they want, how they want, when they want. How far do we take this? The answer is this, hear me. As far as necessary. Say that, as far as necessary. Say it, as far as necessary. As far as necessary. As we all know, the Chazal, the sages, particularly the Perushim, the Pharisees, these are the founders of rabbinic Judaism, are well known for putting up fences around the Torah law. When it comes to these fences, many people will push back, stating that these are only the traditions, only doctrines of men. You've heard that. It has always amazed me that we will put up fences around our rules, the ones in our home that we want our children to follow, but we're against them putting up fences around the law of God, the rules of God. Understand that the purpose for most of these fences is for good reason. It's not just because. It's to make sure we do not cross the line. My father built fences around his rules. Here's some of them. Do you know that my father did not want us? There were 8 young men in our family. There were 10 of us in all, 2 girls and 8 boys. Do you know that for some strange reason, Dad did not want us going out and getting some girl pregnant? He's so mean. And so we were commanded not to have relations with girls. That was the rule. So, we were not permitted to kiss girls. We were forbidden. We were not permitted to kiss a girl. Why? Because kissing leads to something else. Not that kissing would get her pregnant, but kissing leads to other things. And because he did not want us kissing girls, we were not permitted to hug girls, because hugging leads to kissing. And because he did not want us hugging girls, we were not permitted to hold hands with girls, because holding hand leads to hugging, hugging leads to kissing, and kissing leads to other things. And every male in this place knows this. He put up fences. Why? He did not want us to be led to other things. In fact, if we sat with a girl during service, we had to have a Bible or a hymnal between us. That's as close as we were permitted to sit. And by the way, the legalists that they were, my mom and dad checked. My mom particularly would walk behind us, or sitting there in the pew, my mom would walk behind us, and if she thought there was not enough space, she would make space. And if you rebelled, next week it would be 2 hymnals or 2 Bibles. There would be separation. Why? Why were they so mean? Why were they so cruel? Because my father would explain to us, before you get to her, if you have a Bible between you, before you get to her, you will have to get over Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And these are grown men sitting between you and that girl. By the way, gentlemen, where do you wear your seat? Why there? Because before things happen, you will be convicted by the law. You must look at your seat. This is true. When you take off your pants, your seat are there. You must get through your seat to commit adultery. Before anything can happen, a man is confronted with the law. This is the purpose. This is the purpose of the fences of Judaism. And in fact, we can say that God himself erects fences. This very law is a fence against cruelty, not just to the animal, but it is a fence against cruelty to other human beings. One could say, I can cook meat in milk and commit the atrocities of cruelty. I can cook meat in milk and I won't commit the atrocities of cruelty that the Canaanim committed. But God does not want us to even have the appearance of being a goy, a pagan. He does not want us to have even the appearance of cruelty. Therefore, it is forbidden. Yeshua Mashiach, whom we honor as the lawgiver, do you know that he also built fences? In Matthew chapter 5, he states that lusting after a woman is tantamount to adultery. That is a fence. He says it's not just the physical murder that one commits, but the hatred of one's brother is murder. That is offense. The Chazal and the rabbis, they understand this, and they follow suit. There are 2 arguments that people use to counter these fences, to try to tear down these fences, to decline them and to refuse to honor them. The first are the words of Yeshua as an excuse not to abide by fences. The words of Yeshua Mashiach found in Matthew 23, verse 4, speaking concerning the Prushim, the Pharisees, says, they tie up heavy loads, hard to carry, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger to move them. And so they say, you see, these are just heavy loads, hard to carry. Really. Not eating milk with meat, that's a hard load to carry. There are two problems with this argument. The first is this. Is this really a burden too heavy to bear? The second is the context of the verse, because before Yeshua ever speaks those words, he says this: the Torah scholars and the Prushim, the Pharisees, sit on the seat of Moshe, so whatever they tell you to do, do it. You cannot get around that. You see, people want to jump over that to get to this. People want to jump over that command to get to the command that they're making things too heavy and too difficult for us. How many people neglect to see and understand? What many people neglect to see and understand is that Yeshua Mashiach was not against the fence per se. He tells you what he was against. He was against three specific things. Here they are. Needless difficulty imposed by some of the Prushim upon the people. And these matters were put upon the people primarily to control the people. Because why? Everybody likes to tell everybody else what to do. Number two, failure to follow their own rulings, which is the hypocrisy that Yeshua accuses the Prushim of. They tell you to do, but they themselves are not doing. And number three, they are doing things as clickbait. They're doing things to get views. Why? They want people to look at me and see what a holy, righteous person I am, gaining attention for reasons of pride. The second argument that is put forth by many people concerning this thing of meat and milk. The second argument that is put forth is that in Genesis 18, we find the story of Abraham entertaining Malachim, angels, one who is Mashiach. And in verse 8, we read this: then he took butter and milk and the young ox that he had prepared, and he set it before them. And people say, you see, Abraham's eating meat and milk while he was standing by them under the tree, and they ate. So people will say, you see, they ate meat and milk together. And the response is, yes. And he also married his half-sister. So are you going to marry your half-sister? He also was a polygamist. Are you going to be a polygamist? The answer is very simple. God had not yet commanded against these things, saying at the time of Abraham such things were permissible. Whereas at Har Sinai, they become no longer permissible. Abraham was a polygamist. Do you know he had multiple wives? As did Yaakov, as did both kings, David and Shlomo. And in fact, the Torah, do you know, the Torah allows for multiple wives. It's not forbidden. He lays down rules for a man who has more than one wife. Yet, watch, I dare say you are against such arrangements. Yet it's permitted in Torah. So where Torah says don't, you say do. But where Torah says do, you're saying don't. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not a polygamist and I'm not for polygamy. Our perspective on such relationships, what is your perspective? It's abhorrent. It's detestable. Yet Torah allows it, saying, you have built a fence. You just built a fence by admitting that you don't like that and you would not be happy with that. You've built a fence. The very thing that you say you're against. You decry fences and those who build them, yet you build your own. Please understand that many, if not most of the fences that have been put up by the Chazal and the rabbis are there not to be a burden to you, but to help you, to prevent you from breaking the Torah, to prevent sin. Even as my father built fences to prevent my siblings and I from getting a girl pregnant. And understand that not adhering to a fence is not sin. Breaking of Torah is sin. But also, at least give credence as to why the fences were put up in the first place. They were put in place as an aid to keep us from sin. And not all sects of Judaism see these fences the same way. Thus, when it comes to halakha, Judaism states that you should consult your own rabbi for what is practiced. The halakha in every synagogue is different. And so you follow your rabbi. The halakha that we follow here is that within the synagogue, hear me, within the synagogue, we make the separation. We do not eat meat and milk. In your private lives, we're silent. Some here practice separation of meat and milk, others do not. For the sake of those who do, we practice separation in the synagogue. Nor do we demand that you have 2 kitchens. We do not make that demand of you to ensure that separation is complete. Nor do we determine how many numbers of hours, minutes or hours are set between the consumption of meat and milk. We do not make those distinctions. That is up to you. Those are your decisions. In the synagogue, we do practice separation because there are some who do and there are some who don't. Therefore, we follow the line not to offend those who do. However, one should carefully consider the closeness. Listen, the closeness to sin one approaches. When you eat a cheeseburger, how close to the line are you getting? That's the point. How close to the line are you getting? Knowing that the cheese is being cooked on the meat of a calf. Think about it. So how close to the fire are you getting? The consumption of a steak in a restaurant. Do you know that most steaks in most restaurants are cooked in butter? They're cooked in butter. Firstly, think about this. Can you guarantee that the cheese or the butter did not come from the mother of that calf? Can you tell me? Absolutely, positively that this is the case. That's why they're putting the line there. You see, you can say, well, it probably did not. The chances are it did not. But can you guarantee? If you cannot guarantee, you're taking a chance. You're spinning the wheel. You're rolling the dice with an abomination to God. Think about it. If you cannot guarantee this, then there is the possibility that you are breaking Torah in such a way that God calls it a detestable thing. You're playing with fire. Secondly, why? If we know that such a thing is detestable to God, abhorrent to him, he sees it as horrific, why then would we attempt to walk the fine line of something that God declares is abhorrent to him? But I'll tell you, that's what many people do with many things, many aspects of their lives. They walk as close to the edge as they can get, and hopefully not fall off. You may think that such a thing is no big deal. But do you understand that these are the same words that God uses for eating pork? You push pork away, you don't eat bacon, you've given up all of these things. He said the same thing about the pork. Do you know that these are the same words that he uses for idolatry and paganism? That they are abhorrent and detestable. These are the same words that he uses for adultery. It is a detestable thing to. This is the same word that he uses for first-degree murder, for homosexuality, that all of these are in the same classification of sin. They are all called abominable. Thus, he tells us 3 times, not once, not twice, 3 times, do not do this. So our response to him is, okay, I won't do it, but I'm going to get as close as I can. Would you say then that it is okay for me as a married man to be flirtatious with a woman who is not my wife? But I have not committed adultery. I'm just flirting. But you would kick me out of here. You would stop listening to me if that were the case. No? And yet you're willing to play with fire in something that is in the same exact category. Would it be okay for me to hate someone with such fire, with such vehemence, that I actually planned out their murder? But I didn't kill him. I just created a plan. You would not want much to do with me if such an event were to take place. And it hasn't. Well, maybe once, but no. I'm saying apply the same standard to this detestable sin that you would apply to other detestable sins. Saying what? There are fences up for a reason. Rather, we should run to the other end. We should run the other way. Understand that every time I purposefully choose not to eat red meat cooked in milk, I must necessarily remind myself of the command. When I purposefully do not eat a cheeseburger, I am, in essence, reminding myself why this command. There's a reason why I'm doing it. And in reminding myself of this command, I then necessarily remind myself of the purpose of the command. God forbids cruelty to be practiced among his people, not only to animals, but to other human beings. That God requires us to love mercy, unlike the people amongst whom we live. That is what it is to live out Torah. The reason we don't eat milk products with red meat products is because God is teaching us to be a merciful people. Now, what does all this have to do with the fifth day of creation? I'm glad you asked. It is because this only applies to red meat. That is the meat of cattle, sheep, and goats. It does not apply to fish. You can eat fish and milk. You can cook fish in butter. You can eat a fish burger with cheese. Why? Because as we have been teaching and as we read in 1 Corinthians 15, it is a distinctly different flesh, saying the meat of fish is not the same as the meat of a calf. Fish do not benefit from milk, so it is not seen by God as an act of cruelty. The distinction of the various types of meat originated on the fifth and the sixth days of creation. Another type of flesh is that of birds. Bird flesh is not the same as fish, neither is it the same as calves and sheep. It is a different type of meat. I must tell you that there are also fences in Orthodox Judaism against cooking birds with milk products. There's a reason for this, but we do not find it applicable to us, particularly in this day. Why? The reason for this fence against eating chicken cheeseburgers or using butter in the cooking of fowl is this. It is the possibility that one might confuse the meat of a fowl with that of a calf or a kid. And in most cases, it is easy to discern between the two. You look in your refrigerator, you know that that's a chicken, you know that that is a steak, and you're able to distinguish the two. They are distinctly different types of flesh, easily discernible, not to be red meat. There are, however, two forms of the meat of fowl that are problematic, to which we should take care. Today it is common to consume ground turkey, right? Like ground beef. Ground turkey looks almost exactly like ground beef. If they are not packaged, it's very difficult to distinguish between the two. The other is dry meat. Turkey jerky. Turkey jerky. Say that. Turkey jerky. Thank you. I just wanted to do that for fun. Turkey jerky looks similar to beef jerky, and this is the reason for the fence, as most meats in the past were preserved by drying. Remember that these are ancient rules. Most meats in the past were preserved by drying. This is still practiced in many cultures around the world today. Keep in mind that most of the history of Judaism was pre-modern, and having means of keeping meat and they did not have the means of keeping meat without drying the meat. Also, they did not have electric lighting that we do today, able to see clearly in the dark. What was that was being picked out within in the house, particularly at night? They were choosing pieces of meat by light of a dim fire, candle, or lamp if they had it. It would not always be clearly seen and able to determine whether the dried meat chosen was that of a fowl or a goat or a sheep. Thus, to avoid making a mistake in what God says is an abomination, by the way, fish, you can tell by the smell, even in the dark. Thus, to avoid making a mistake in what God says is an abomination to him, the option was to refrain from cooking any meat except fish in a milk product. Again, these rulings were not intended to be a hardship upon the people, but rather to keep people from sin. Keep in mind that the Jewish people paid an overwhelming, tremendous price for not keeping Torah. Hundreds of thousands were killed by the Babylonians. The entire leadership was taken into captivity and enslaved, and a great spiritual darkness covered the land for those who remained. The capital city is destroyed. The temple is destroyed. Listen, they had to watch cannibalism overcome the people. Mothers and fathers literally resorting to eating their own children. It happened. Read Jeremiah. The Chazal determined that the people would never return to the ways of the Goyim, to the ways of the pagans around them. Thus, the men of the great assembly, the Sanhedrin, began synagogues to teach the people Torah every Shabbat. And they began to build fences around those things which God had forbidden, those things which he told them they must not do. When people decry the fences that have been put around the commandments, understand why they are there. You were not there when Jerusalem fell. You were not there to watch the furnishings of the sacrifices of the temple being carried off and the temple set ablaze. You have not watched the starving mother and father eating the flesh of their own children because of the wickedness that had overcome the people. You did not witness the slaughter and the bloodshed. Yes, there are some fences that to our generation seem to be overboard, overkill, extreme. But before we turn up our noses at these fences, because, well, that's not found in Torah, at least take the time to understand why that fence was built and at what cost. And with all things, we should ask ourselves this question. Is this my holiness making a demand? Or is this my flesh making the demand? Is this my righteousness making this demand? Or is it my animal nature making the demand? Allow me to put it this way, and we're closed. As we studied at the beginning of this series, God made Tzimtzum so that we could exist in him. He made room, saying he withheld, he withdrew, he withheld a part of himself for our sake. Why are we so willing? Why are we so unwilling to withhold parts of our lives for his sake? What he did for us. Why are we so unwilling? Why do we fight and wrestle against doing the same for him? Reciprocation. Why, when we know that something is abhorrent to him, do we seek to approach as close to the abhorrent thing as possible without crossing the line? I tell you, if you do it with this, You also do it in other areas of your life. It's not a one-time, one-thing event. Even though it was not you, listen, even though it was not you who hit the skunk, the odor of the skunk still pervades the air and gets into your car as you're driving down the road. And that stench, you didn't hit the skunk. You just drove by it. But that stench remains with you for a while. Saying, it's not just about avoiding the skunk that is dead in the middle of the road. It's about avoiding even smelling the scent of the skunk. It's not just about avoiding the things which God forbids. It's about avoiding even the stench of those things. Rather, we should run as far from such as we can, avoiding even the appearance of evil. Not only should we not want to do what God has forbidden us to do, we should not even want to get close to the edge. We should not want to walk up to the line. He said, do not test me. Don't test him. Again, I can guarantee you that if you're walking up to the line, knowingly walking up to the line, in this instance, I can guarantee you, you're walking up to the line in other places in your life. Why? That's your way. That's your way. So yes, this is a call for repentance. From turning away, not just from this, but from all the things where we approach the line that God tells us not to cross. We test him, see how close we get without getting shocked. So we find the foundation of the rules of kashrut in the 5th and 6th day of creation. Next week we will take up the 6th day, the creation of the mammals. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. We ask that you would forgive us for testing you, for seeing how far we can get away from things, how close we can get to the edge, seeing what we can get away with. And Father, it is only because you are good and merciful and kind and gracious and forgiving that we're still alive today. But you do warn us not to put you to the test. And so, Father, help us to be careful. Not only in this, Father, but in all the aspects of Torah in our lives, all the interaction, how we deal with people. To be kind to our animals. To be kind to the people around us. To be kind even to the strangers. To love even our enemies. Help us to learn these truths and to put them into practice for the sake of Yeshua Mashiach. In his name, we plead for your help. And all God's people said, let's all stand.